The dress rehearsals are complete, and now we pause for final contemplations, deliberations and predictions. Over the next 4 nights, the finest minds gather at the Fox Footy Round Table to debate the fortunes of the many and ponder the ultimate question: what will 2016 look like? So let the guessing begin. Brownlow medalist Gerard Healy, Premiership Hawk Dermot Brereton, Premiership Lion Jonathan Brown, Premiership player and the sharpest analytical mind in the game, David King. Welcome.
Gerard.
Throw your reputations into the pot. We'll let you know how it goes in October. I'm interested in your approach just as a starting point. Is this a season that is open to complete upheaval, or, Gerard, will the status quo win out?
I think it's a chance to be a bit of upheaval. I'm not sure about complete upheaval, but if I look at the top 8 from last year, I think there's probably 4, possibly 5 sides that are at risk of sliding. If you have a bad slide, that means you're out of the 8. And I see 4 absolute chances to go into the 8. Geelong, Collingwood, GWS in particular, Port Adelaide are another one. I'm not sure where Gold Coast are. Yeah. Gold Coast could do anything this year, make the 8, finish in the bottom 2 or 3, but their pre-season's been pretty impressive.
What's your broad brush, Derm?
Oh, mine is Hawthorn still have the best list. They've come back a little bit. Lake's been so good in final series for them, so there's no Lake now, so there's only one key defender in Frawley. But for the first time in 2 years, some of the logical contenders have improved their list. Fremantle got better with Bennell in the forward half. West Coast Eagles have added to their midfield depth, and Geelong, their recruiting is well documented as well. So those around them, for the first time for 2 years, have got better.
Brownie?
I think there's 12 genuine chances to make the final and finals, and I think the top 8 is a lot more open. Certainly the opportunities to make the top 4 is a lot broader than we've seen the past couple of years, but still, Hawthorn and West Coast are still the benchmarks, I would have thought.
You've given your prospectus an absolute hammering before round 1, Kingy. That's in
the Bible.
tatters.
That's
what
the
have
Bible,
you decided?
It hasn't helped me, I can tell you. Oh, look, I think that the gap between 9th and 14th won't be 6 wins. That's what it was last year. I think that'll tighten right up, and in effect, that'll probably squeeze 5th through to 14th. No one really has a great lock on where those sides actually sit. But the top 4 or 5, I think we're going to stay true with what we know and what we've seen. Until we see something different. And we are probably seeing, the GWS, Port Adelaide mould that is a wildcard brand. Gerard, I think Melbourne's a classic point that I think is evidence of what you're suggesting. They won just 7 games last year. They clearly look as if they're on the way up. New style of play, some maturity in some of their talented players. But they've got to win another 3 games to actually go up 1 spot.
Yep.
So to suggest they're going to make the 8 suggests that they've got to they've got to win 5 or 6 more games. That's probably beyond them, but they're tracking well. And some of those sides hanging around the 8 inside and outside, they're going to lose games to the likes of Melbourne, Gold Coast. It's going to be so exciting.
All right, 4 teams for you to contemplate tonight: Adelaide, Richmond and West Coast. But we start where the whole season revolves around and has done for a few years now. We start with the Hawks.
Out the back, Puopolo looks to look at the pickup, look at the speed from Rioli. He's a genius.
Puopolo got a high tackle, back to Hodge. That's a goal, I think. It is. Hodge has done it from nowhere. So Hawthorn have done it. The first team in the 18-team competition to go back to back to back.
So can it be 4? Kingy, we've asked you to do the basic accounting on every team. Recent trend, list strength versus draw difficulty, and the key ins and the outs. Lead us off.
Well, have a look at the Hawks' wins the last 5 years in the home and away series. It's frightening, really. 18, 17, 19, 17 and 16. It just shows you how good they are. That's the platform that they're starting from. They've got the best list in the competition, and they've got the 6th hardest draw. So they've got a good draw when you whale that up. The ins and outs, they've managed to get hold of Fitzpatrick from Melbourne, which he'll play an important role for them, whether it be forward, back or part in the ruck, whatever they choose to do. And the losses of Hale, Lake and Suckling are probably the question marks. We're not sure how that'll really impact them.
It's the first time they've gone into a season, though, with less talent on their list than the year before. Each and every year over the last 3 or 4, they've been able to pluck a big name and stick it in the list. And Hale may be the missing link. They've got a Segler, though, and that's their great strength. They've always had this backup through the season, but all of a sudden, in losing 3 or 4, they're just 5% less prepared for the onset of an injury plague.
It's a good point, Jared, because they've lost the spine. So lost Lake, Hale, so you've lost your full back, really your full forward, and let's not forget Jared Roughhead for half the season as well. So your centre half forward, he's not a traditional key position player. He obviously plays in the midfield and robes as well. But that's a big loss, especially in critical games, high contested games. You like to have your spine in order where you want to kick down the line. So can they cover that? Obviously, the other question mark is too, I was involved in this at Brisbane. We went for our 4th.
Yep.
The thing that got us was the ageing list and the injuries in September. And that's always a great unknown, but you're a lot more likely to, I suppose, run into injury problems with an ageing list.
So age hasn't wearied them yet, Derm. When does that become a factor?
I thought it might have kicked in 2 years ago, but when you hold them up to the standards of the rest of the competition, their program for their over 30s or their 200 game players is the best by far. So you look at Mitchell and he's 33. He's actually still getting better. And what has made him good is he's never had pace, so he can't lose it. But he's got a sidestep, and the pace in the sidestep is still razor sharp. So he could be around for a while. So you're talking about Hodge and Burgoyne, and Burgoyne's actually still moving beautifully as well.
Have a look at those guys, Jerry. Have a look at those oldies that you're talking about. There's only 4 players on their list that are over 30. I think the perception is there's 6 to 8. We've highlighted 3 of those guys. Sam Mitchell, 33, averaging 31 disposals last year. Hasn't dropped off at all, and his pre-season's been of an elite standard again. Hodge has done what he's had to do at 31, and Burgoyne, well, he's probably been the best traded player over the last 8 to 10 years.
Well, there was 6 though. Lake and Hale go
by the end of this year
out.
with 4.
Year.
And I think that the perception is going for 4 in a row that you think that there's a lot more than the reality.
I think they've done well to help because September campaigns can be brutal. A lot of guys play with injuries they normally wouldn't play on in the regular season. I think that can hurt guys at the back end of their career. So that'll be interesting to watch. But Hawthorn, I think their management of their players has been unbelievable. It's revolutionised the game for me.
He's a fascinating player, though, Sam Mitchell. And I think we just need to spend just a touch more time on him. To beat Hawthorn, you still have to beat Sam Mitchell, and yet since Cameron Ling retired, nobody's prepared to go head-to-head with Sam Mitchell. He's also a guy I think needs to be held up by AFL coaches and said, this is the player that we want coming into the competition. Yeah. He's brilliant on left and right side, both with handball and with kicking skills, and yet we're seeing so often that as the pressure's gone up, coaches are telling players, go to your preferred side to deal with it. Sam Mitchell, he is the person that should be held up as don't go to your preferred side, have both sides so you can get away from the pressure. Use your left, use your right, and yet I see Sam Mitchell not being emulated.
That's what emphasises how good their list is and why it is the best list. I think he's their most important player, their best player. Yet 3 grand finals ago, they kept him to, I think, to 12 possessions. So Crowley went to him, tagged him, and they were able to bring so they take him out to the back flank, and they were able to put other players in. What other team has that luxury? And they win a grand final. What other team has that luxury?
No other team has that luxury. They've changed the game. Their flexibility of players is amazing. You've got to be a multi-positional player to play for Hawthorn, and that's going across the competition now. But I just want to touch on the midfielders you talk about. You got Lewis, who only kicked 9 goals last year. Mitchell only kicked 6 goals. Burgoyne only kicked 9, and they're predominantly the midfield core. Shields only kicked 13. Hill on a wing kicked 16, so they kicked a little bit more. They only asked their forwards to kick the goals. Their midfield win the ball back.
A little bit of Isaac Smith for a true winger, but they rest him forward. They rest him forward though.
Hodgie kicked 21, but he does go deep forward. So I think that when we look at midfields across the competition, we say we need more goals from a Cochin. We need more goals from Fife. Well, Hawthorn's midfielders don't kick goals. It is that forward group that put it on.
Well, that is a question mark. Who replaces Roughhead then? Yeah, obviously Roughhead's a big goal scorer. Can Schoenmakers step up and be the number 1 forward, or key forward certainly?
Well, last season, if you look at their forward 6, or 5 of their forward 6, you've got 3 of them that have kicked 50-plus goals last year. I mean, it's a frightening number and a great spread, and it makes it almost impossible to clamp those guys. You know, Puopolo plays his role, Rioli plays his role, they go into the midfield at centre bounces when they have to. I don't necessarily think you have to replace Roughhead as a player. I just think you replace that role. They'll do it. They'll find a player to do it with.
Roughhead, any team that has Roughhead in it is going to be better off for it. But I don't think he's structurally integral to Hawthorn. He's the biggest small forward in the comp. He's 6'4.5", 6'5", 104 kilos, but he plays like a small forward. So he's not integral to their structure. So you could bring his, as long as somebody else is crafty and can sneak a few through the big sticks, that will go a little bit of the way.
But he's expected to be back in the back half of the season, isn't he?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Fresh and ready to go. Hey, Brownie, Hawthorn's strategic superiority has been there on all the key days in recent years. Will Clarkson have to evolve further, or is what he's been doing enough to hold teams at bay?
I don't think he changed a hell of a lot. There's no doubt they change a little bit over each pre-season, probably as much to keep the players stimulated and keep them sharp of mind. But definitely their mobility in their forward line is a great strength. You've got Rioli, Bruce, Puopolo, even the bigger guys, like the Roughheads, are mobile. So I still think we see them keep pressing hard on the opposition. I think we saw in 2015 they put a lot of pressure on the opposition, tried to keep it in their forward line. That worked really well. I think we'll see that again because there is a little bit of a question mark over their defence. You know, who replaces the Lake? You know, so who is the second defender? They don't want to get it down there as much. So I expect to still see that Hawthorn press.
If there's going to be any evolution, it'll only be forced upon them.
Yeah.
I think the analysis of the bubble by yourself early, Kingy, was seen by the rest of the competition. A few had already got onto it and tried to stop the bubble. But if you're stopping the bubble, that immediate first possession within the 15 to 20 metre range, it just means that there'll be a space somewhere else. And the Clarko, narrative will simply be find the space. If it's not inside, it'll be outside. If they block the outside, go back to the inside.
Spot on. I think the rules are going to help Hawthorn even further. Yeah. There's already that protected area now around the mound the mark, which they love to use, that area behind. Now you can't go within 10 metres, so their kicking skills will actually be coming to the fore more often.
And this is the ultimate quest, isn't it, Jared? Is the 4 in a row's only been done once before.
Yeah, and it's never been done in the AFL era. And I'm a big one to distinguish between the two. Totally different challenges. To do it in this AFL era is so hard. I mean, Brisbane has had one of the greatest, if not the greatest team of all. We'll find out if Hawthorn can take that mantle from them.
So there'll be a closing question on each team which requires a definitive answer. When we sat same 4 last year, the 3 of you gentlemen all said Hawthorn would win the flag. And Quingy, you equivocated to the point I don't know whether you answered yes or no. But so 3 this answer must include either the word.
He's waited to give me that quick.
This answer must include either the word yes or no. Not can. Will Hawthorn win a 4th flag?
Yes, Hawthorn will win a 4th flag unless someone else beats them.
Yes. No, I don't think they will, but they're a very good chance. They're going to be in the mix.
Jared, I'm going to say they could be the first team to finish outside of the top 4 and still win the flag because they're the best big game team in the comp. I'll go with no just on history, but I think that they could change what we've seen in the AFL era.
OK, before Hawthorn's quest begins on Easter Monday against Geelong, there's a special treat for Hawks fans. It's the annual and rather delightful for the Premiership team, the Grand Final recall.
Puopolo got a high tackle, back to Hodge. That's a goal, I think. It is. Hodge has done it from nowhere.
You would normally put it at the top of the goal square, but I could sort of see there was a few West Coast blokes there.
Tell us when. Yeah, I said top of the square part. I just thought it was going to go out of bounds.
Yeah. I was just inside there and Hodgie wasn't thinking anything but goal.
Luke Hodge, what a champion he is. Off one step from the boundary, the banana, and what a reaction that is in front of the Hawthorn fans.
Until now, there you go. Critters kicks. Oh, yeah!
Pritis on his favourite left side. Sold some candy. Needs it to bend a little. Got it.
So once you've dealt with Hawthorn, it has to be on to West Coast, given the events of last year. There is, I will warn you, there's the chance to play along at home. I like to call this Judge the Judges.
Oh, no.
Use the hashtag FoxFooty and let us know how you think the
Load up
predictions
on
are.
King.
Thanks, Jared.
Get in on it.
That'll be good.
So West Coast, the balance sheet here, Kingy, runs heavily in their favour out of what happened last year.
Yeah, they're tracking the right way, aren't they? I mean, you look at the Simpson era over their wins and losses over the last couple of seasons in particular. 11 wins his first year, up to 16 the home and away last year, and it looks like going north of that again. Their list quality is ranked second, only behind Hawthorn, and it's got the best layering you've seen. There isn't a void on that. Yeah, great demographics. Draw rate rated 10th, which gives them an opportunity. Brownie, that's a luxury that I'm not sure every club's happy that they've got. And they've lost a few players. They've lost Bo Waters through retirement, Selwood, Rosa and Sinclair by choice, and obtained Jeddah, Giles and Redden. So there's some ins to like, and not a lot. They haven't lost a lot.
And Eric McKenzie.
And Eric back.
Two of those players obviously didn't really feature heavily last year. Bo Waters not, and Scotty Selwood was injured for most of the year.
So predominantly, Jared, the question is, can they back up 2015?
Well, to back up, you've just got to get better. I mean, there's no guarantees that you can do it. You've got to have a good run with injury. But take all those intangibles out of it. I look at them and say they've got an elite back line and they're adding Eric McKenzie. They've got an elite forward line with the potential of maybe the best swingman in the business in McGovern. But it leaves their midfield. And their midfield, I think, despite some elite players, it's still collectively mid-range. And that's where I think they need to get better. They've got Pritter, Shuey, Gaff and Nat Nui. I think everyone could see they're reasonably elite players. But they've got Yo. Yo was disappointing in the last few games last year, but he's a talent, a real talent. Jeddah comes back from Sydney after 2 disappointing years, but we've seen him play well in big games. I think they can put Darling in there. That gives them a roughhead type figure in there. Marston was good last year, can get better. Dom Sheet certainly can get better. Liam Duggan, another junior A-grade talent, high draft pick, and he gives them another chance to have some more polish in there. Sherrod Wellingham also could go in there. So they've got some flexibility. They've got some inbuilt ability to improve through youth. But collectively, they've just got to get better in that area.
So you've got them as the second best list when you've carved it up. So how have you quantified that?
We'll have a look at elite players and above average players. Elite players being ranked in the top 10% in their position. So those players include McGovern, Pritis, Natanui, Shuey, LaCroix and Hearn. And Kennedy just on the edge of the elite category, and then you drop back to above average.
So you got Hearn in elite, but not Kennedy.
Now Kennedy's right on the cusp. Well, it's just done by
it's purely statistical.
Purely statistical.
It's over 2 years.
So it's not opinion based.
No, it's no opinion in there at all. And you can see by list quality they're exactly the same. If you add the elite and the above average players, they've got 15, which is equal most with Hawthorn. Hawthorn have got more elite players. That's why they're ranked number one.
A high amount of you look at the 17 players with 100 plus games, which is they're in the purple patch of trying to win a premiership. You know, that's a lot of experience out there, and they've got the best forward line in the game for mine. You know, they've got 5 guys capable of kicking 30 to 40 plus goals each a season. So,
but it matters not if you don't get it in there.
Well,
and like Sydney the year before, they got butchered in the grand final just at centre clearances. And if you're going to beat Hawthorn, you have to break down the Hodge, Mitchell, Lewis trio in that middle of the ground.
I think they'll come up against a great side, Hawthorn. They were fantastic on the day. They were deer in the headlights grand final day, West Coast. And they were still in the game halfway through the third quarter and played poorly. The blokes, experienced campaigners who were fumbling out there. You know, I think their depth is good in their midfield, and they've added the Jedders, the Reddens and those guys. I'm excited about what you said, Jared. You know, Duggan, Sheed, you know, Hutchings played some really good footy there. So I think their depth... Elliot Yeo. I think their depth is quite good. For me, Eric McKenzie coming back tips them over the top. And of course, Mitch Brown is there as well. But Eric McKenzie is the best and fairest winner from 2014. He's one of the best key defenders in the competition. And I believe they need one big lockdown key defender. That's something they didn't have last year. And it gets exposed if their midfield pressure is not enough. The Webb can't cover poor midfield pressure upfield. However, I think McKenzie can help cover that.
So just a balance. Can I go with a balance on this? I agree with you, but last year, that fantastic, and they blew my summation of them out of the water. Well done. Priddis, Shuey and Gaff, legitimate stars. I thought they fell away pretty prominently in midfield depth thereafter. I looked at it and thought, this won't cover 22 games. 3 blokes. If one's injured, one's a bit down, 2 blokes. Tag one of them, that's all left to the other one. And normally, Priddis might be the third one you put the press on because he won't tear away from a pack with you. No real depth there. But they got through. They Hutchings and those types of fellas who came in and played roles as pseudo midfielders for them. Now they've added Jeddah and Redden, legitimate A-grade midfielders in their own right when they're up and running. So they get better in the midfield, which was their question area for me. The one question I would like to ask you, gents, they played a style of football that accounted for 16 other teams, the Eagles web. You loved it. We all loved watching it on occasions. But Hawthorn actually walked out their grand final day, and it was as if Hawthorn was saying, please play the web. Step into the office, because that works against 16 others. Try leaving Cyril by himself. Do they go the year now playing the web to knock over 16 teams and then worry about the width of the MCG on the big day and decide, do they play one-on-one presses then, or do they go the web then? So they've got a choice of game style. Be wonderful if they're capable of switching from one to the other in-game during the season, but it is a question for them.
I think it's the same challenge that faces Luke Beveridge, who had a similar exposure of zone defence, web defence, but ultimately the web breaks down not because there's a bloke by himself in the back line. It breaks down because the pressure isn't strong enough up in the forward line. Now, with the change in the man on the mark rule, there may be a necessity for some tinkering around that, and clearly the MCG is a lot wider than Subiaco, so there's going to be some challenges on the way through, but I don't think manning up Cyril is going to be the answer. I think.
But if you got one eye 20 metres either side of him, and I'm in the midfield looking back over my shoulder and said Rioli with a man 20 metres either side, and you got Hawthorn's kicking skills.
He's done it. He's managed to get Rioli into a West Coast discussion. He's a freak.
But it's about their game style and what they want to do to restrict the teams around them like Hawthorn.
And the coach did say that it was Mackenzie's absence, the inspiration was necessity in the web. Does it give him the capacity to try something else during the game?
They changed the game.
There's no doubt
It did.
that was where it came from.
They changed the game by putting Wellingham to a halfback flank, trusting Shepherd and Hearn to take larger bodies, key position players more often than not. But it gave them great counter-attack. I think they were top 4 in the competition for ball speed out of the back half.
If you were a forward in the Eagles forward line last year, you'd love the way they brought the ball in. You'd love it.
They relied on a lot of...
That won't change.
No, of course it won't.
They relied on their defenders being a little bit looser and playing more zoning defence because they needed to get there to help be third up and to take intercept marks because all their defenders were undersized. I think now you can tighten up on your own man a little bit better, knowing full well that Mackenzie is able to take the big bopper out of action. I think they'll stick to the web, so-called web, but they'll just tinker it a little bit just to make that adjustment. There is no doubt about it.
I think Mackenzie was top 5 in the competition in 2014 for intercept marks, so that's his style anyway.
It is.
They won't change what they're doing, and they could get better. I mean, we talk about McGovern, and there's been some argy-bargy between the coach and Jeremy himself as to
He'll play where the coach says he plays.
He'll play where Adam says, but where does he play? Where does he best suit the team?
Does Brown fit into that team then? If you're going to play Shepherd, Wellingham, intercept marks, Mackenzie's capable of slipping straight in. Does Brown get a game in that with McGovern back there as well?
Not in the best side, I reckon.
I think the whole McGovern issue is we know he can play forward. We know he's probably the best intercept marker in the competition in defence. But it's a question mark of where you address or how you address your deficiencies. Their deficiency that needs to get better, and it's only a mild deficiency, is their midfield. Does Darling go into the midfield, which means McGovern goes forward? It's a matter of your chess pieces.
Well, the
beauty is he's got some A-grade chess pieces to stick around.
Do they go with Lysett or do they go with the McGovern to back up in the ruck a little bit? Obviously, Sinclair's not there now.
I think they'll go with 2 ruckman. They've got McGovern. Sorry, they've got Lysett. Nat Nui will be the number 1. He looks fit, which is exciting for the competition.
So the final question assumes the best case scenario, and you are the coach. What is your principal position for Jeremy McGovern?
Intercept marker in defence.
Term?
I think they've got enough. I think forwards who can mark the ball high off the ground, in the front end of the ground, are too hard to come by. Having said that, West Coast have got 2 good ones already. I wouldn't mind adding a third, and I reckon they can cover the back.
I don't think they need McGovern in the forward line. They kick enough goals. I'd play him at centre-half back, intercept marker.
I actually think he could play wild card. He could nearly be another Jared Roughhead. He could nearly roam around, back when the game needs him to be back, and play a little bit on ball.
Your Honour, could you direct the witness to answer the question? Jeremy McGovern's primary position.
You didn't have primary in there. Where would you play him? I'd play him as a roaming wingman. Can play. There's many players in the competition that play multiple roles, Jared. I would just play him as...
So would you play him on that goods role where he starts on a wing and then gets a mismatch and drifts forward, or goes into the back line?
He can play great wing roles, Jared.
All right, we're bullish about West Coast. Is there a chill in the room? Because next up is Richmond.
Swings a booted at Rebolt, following up like a penalty.
Richmond roaring in Perth.
Oh, brilliant speed by Edwards.
The terms of Richmond's season are pretty well set and agreed upon universally. It's win a final or bust, and yet that is such a long way off, and I sense an air of doubt has entered the room. David, the accounting on the Tigers.
Well, let's have a look at their last 5 years in terms of wins and losses, and they've gone 8, 10, 15, 12 and 15. They've won a lot of home and away games, and the build has been done methodically and well. 8th rated list. 3rd toughest draw. That's a real question mark as to how they handle that. That's out of whack. The ins is a big in of Chris Yarran. I think that's a significant in. Whether he's ready to go round 1 or not is largely irrelevant, really, when we're talking about finals campaign. Townsend to come in and give some midfield support, and the loss of really only Chris Newman shouldn't affect them too much.
So, Derm, this is a team that has to improve because they haven't been able to win finals. Can you see the improvement when you look into them?
They're one of these teams that I have no bond to them, but I love watching them because they take you on a journey every time they go out there. They're good for your soul because they teach you about your emotions. So much so, no detachment. I buy a membership each year because they take me on that emotional journey. If you stand still in this competition, you're actually going backwards because everybody else is improving. I saw the footage of Yarran the other night, and then if I was looking at yearling racehorses, he's not playing round 1. He might have moved semi-okay. He's too thick through the girth still. He's got a little bit to find top pace. Townsend is a lovely kid, wonderful boy, toughest player I've seen coming in 20 years, but he's not going to win a Brownlow. I can't see that their list is improved. Yarran's not there. I don't think he's there for...
Say he's there round 6. Why the importance of round 1? They haven't had a problem winning home and away games the last 5 years.
Tell me a team... North Melbourne breaks this mould, but tell me the team that has a less than 50% record in the first 6 games that makes finals.
Well, Richmond did it 2 years ago. I think they won 3 of their first 12 games.
We're talking about absolute abnormalities. 1 every 2 years does it.
You're right. I'm just arguing the point that I don't think it's all or nothing for if Yarran plays round 1.
I agree, but to me, what steps out in round 1 and for the following weeks is not better than what stepped out there in the first week of finals.
Isn't the overall question now, is this group on the path to a premiership, or is it on the path to winning a final? I mean, a lot of clubs finish up winning a final and then have to go back down. And to me, the answer is it all depends on how much improvement they can get out of their second-tier players. Their top-tier players, they're terrific players. A couple of them have got scars from finals like Cochin, etc. But I'm sure they can get through that. But when I look at
arguably they've got 6 A-graders, genuine
terrific
A-graders in the competition.
But I look at Brandon Ellis, who needs to get better at getting the ball. He gets lots of possessions, but he needs to get better at getting the ball and doing some damage. Reece Conker, Batchelor, Grimes, Ashbury, question mark on Chris Yarran. Vickery's another one who, if he takes his best into 75% of the game, makes a massive difference. But their best and their worst, this group of players, is just too far away.
See, I come from a different angle, and they're A-grade players, seriously good players, but I'd like to see them get better.
Yeah.
Trent Cotchin played some startlingly good football last year. Early in the year when they took on Collingwood in that semi-wettish day, his final quarter was inspirational. He played physical. Now, whether you can keep doing that is a question Joel Selwood could answer. But if he can play that way, he goes to a new level. He drags the team with him. So I reckon it's their A-graders who need to give us more lead from the lead.
That gets them to win that first final potentially. But if they're going to be a premiership chance, and they're still a significant away,
that's a fair call.
Mate, they've got to get a better group. And the group has got to be better than just their top 6 players.
That is a fair call. But there's still improvement for those A-graders.
You're dead right, and Cochin showed at times last year he stood up in pressure situations and led with that physicality, which is probably not natural as part of his personality. I see the night they beat Hawthorn, the MCG,
same thing.
Straight into Hodge, straight into the Hawthorn midfielders. They were laughing at him, but Cochin had the last laugh. Then you go to that first final, big pressure situation. Ben Jacobs backpacks Cochin, doesn't get a lot of support, but Cochin doesn't go back hard aggressively like he did against Hawthorn. That's where he needs to mature and be able to do that. The question mark for me, their draw early is tough. I think their first 9 games is arguably the toughest in the competition. So they're under pressure early on. I think it's their depth, Jared. Their depth. Is their depth good enough? Is a Vickery good enough to come and kick 40 goals? 40 plus goals this year, which he needs to back up a Rewalt. And the other thing is, for me, a lot talked about their game style last year, mainly their ball movement, very slow, methodical build-up, relying on sort of uncontested marks. That seemed to work well, but is the game starting to quicken up now with what we've seen in the pre-season? Does that suit the game this year if it's a little bit quicker pace, or does that catch him out, that slow ball movement? Because, as we say, everyone seems to be moving the ball quicker now.
So that elimination final loss will hound the whole year. It colours everything. And when you keep falling at the same hurdle, that is both legitimate and correct. When you look back into that, as Richmond must have, what's the learning out of it?
Well, I think you talked about the plan, or is it the individual players? We've just isolated 3 players, which is a little bit unfair. Everyone's talking about Trent Cotchin and what he needed to do in a finals campaign. Shane Edwards is probably their best player. He's their most important player, and he's going to be out for a significant chunk at the start of the year. And Brandon Ellis, they had less possessions on their impact throughout the home and away than they did in that final. They had less contested possessions, so they weren't tough enough. They couldn't find their own ball, and that ultimately is finals football. And they had less impact, not damaging enough. So those guys carry some scars forward. Now, it's going to be a long time coming before they get the chance to right that wrong, and they may never get that chance. There's nothing given in football, but the gap's not big, Jared. And I'll throw it up again. They won 15 games last year. I know they've been bundled out in the first final each of the last 3 seasons.
15's a good get, isn't it?
15's a lot of wins. I mean, they're a game off top 4, gives you the double chance, gives you an opportunity. They've got the best record against Hawthorn of any team in the competition over the last 3 to 4 years. So to be able to compete with the Hawthorn shows you that you're not far away. I know they've only gone after Yaron. It's not a massive improvement to the list. The injuries of Conker, even though he's not a first 10 player, and Shane Edwards will impact them enormously in the first half of the year.
Edwards hurts. Yaron, when he does come back, and we might add this, I think he's stunning. He is a stunning player that very few teams can really limit. And given that he can drop into a team that can support him, allow him a little bit of as a backman, a luxury of a one-on-one, and allow him to drive the ball forward by foot, running with it, he is a weapon to be utilised in the later rounds.
One of the big strengths of Richmond, they've got goal-kicking midfielders, so Cochin, Martin, Delidio, I think Edwards, they're all potent forwards within their own right, and I think we'll see a bit more of that this year with the interchange cap, midfielders having to spend time forward, so I think that's a big bonus for them.
The value of stability at Richmond, the decision to extend the Hardwick contract instead of putting this year on trial, and now's about the right time to give it a test, but to take the heat out of that and the potential of it blowing itself up.
I would have thought it was the obvious move to extend his contract, despite the fact that they have fallen at the first hurdle. They've got to the first hurdle, which a lot of clubs haven't been able to do, and I would think he now knows that now's their time. The demographics of their list suggest it's now. They haven't got a lot coming through the 21 to 24 age bracket. Dusty's the number 1. Nick Vlossen is also in that group. Got some talent there, but not a lot of talent. So they are really in the business of winning a flag in the next couple of years.
Oh, yeah, big tick for me. I think the one area that we look at Richmond, and more so than really drilling down into the personnel, we look at historical achievements or lack of achievements, and unfairly we probably target these. And one is their turnover of coaches when there's a speed hump in their plot. Don't do it. Go with Hardwick. He's got a set. He's got a plan. You've got to see it through.
There's a set of players, Brownie, who prompt such great debate. Where should they be? Where's their greatest effectiveness? When you look at Jack Riewoldt and what he can do for Richmond, where do you want him?
There's no doubt he's the centre forward. He roams up the field really well. He connects well. Probably kicks the ball to other forwards better than anyone in the competition for a key forward. But he's still got to spend enough time inside forward 50. I don't think a Vicar is capable of kicking a 60-plus goals, which you want Riewoldt to kick. So he needs to get in there, spend the time there. Obviously, Rance is a key to lock down the opposition's best forward as well.
I don't think anyone's kicked more goals than Jack over the last 7 years of footy.
Great,
he's found the balance. I know he's trialled in different areas 2 years ago, and that failed. All those trials failed, and they corrected mid-year. I think the biggest question for Richmond is how many of those next wave players can push up and not become stars, but just become good, solid, bona fide AFL players. And I don't think... I think that'll minimise the peaks and troughs that they have. Instead of being here and then here, if they get a nice even performance, I've got them in the top 4, Jared, because I don't think. I think their stars are so good. Alex Rance would change any team. You put Alex Rance in at St Kilda, and all of a sudden that'd change. You put him into. They'd love to have him at Hawthorn. Love to have him at the Gold Coast. Those sorts of teams, but I think Riewoldt and Rance give them an enormous platform to build.
So the final question is one for the creative thinkers, so you can go last, Jared. We'll work this way around the table. What happens if Richmond doesn't win a final?
What happens? Well, pretty much what's happened in the last 3 years. I don't think a lot changes. I don't think the coach's career hangs in the balance with winning a final. I think that he's achieved enough. I think 15, 12 and 15 wins the last 3 years. If they get to the finals, that's at least 13. I think it shows that they're on the right path. Maybe they have to go after some bigger names in the free agency market.
Yeah, I think they could finish top 4, and I think they could finish out of the 8. It's that close for them. But I think Hardwick's done a fantastic job. Nothing changes. I've got them missing the finals, but nothing changes for mine. I just think the blowtorch really ramps up on the senior players. Obviously, they haven't coped throughout the season in the pressure moments, so let's wait and see.
Dan?
Because I haven't seen great improvement in their list, I've got them slipping a bit back on the win-loss ratio. I've got them half and half, 11 wins, and I think that'll probably... So I'm not cruel enough to say they're going to finish 9th. I've got them 10th.
I know one thing, Dermot. You will buy 2 memberships because there's a Rioli at Richmond. I think if they don't miss the 8, they will be almost duty-bound to go even stronger at the free trade market because their demographics is now. Their window for premiership is now. What's coming through underneath the 24-year-old isn't enough to say, here's the next wave. And the next wave is almost upon us with GWS and the Gold Coast are going to come, and now's their time.
It'll be rollicking one way or the other with the Tigers. One team to go tonight. It's Adelaide up next.
And he hits to Taylor Walker. One of the toughest kicks in footy, but if anyone can do it, and he can, and he can.
No way, not from there. What an incredible season it has been for the Adelaide Crows.
There was nothing normal about Adelaide's 2015, and now the Don Pike era begins with no shortages of challenges. And Kingy, some of these are identified on the balance sheet.
Oh, they're obvious to see, aren't they? Look at their last 5 years, and you can see 7 wins, jumped up to 17, 10, 11, and then back to 13 last year, just making the finals, which is a good effort. Their list is rated 12th, which is a dramatic drop, and we'll get to the main reason in a moment. And they've got the second toughest draw, so that's out of whack.
That's the doomsday equation.
That's a really bad balance sheet there. The outs obviously Dangerfield is a massive out. Riley's obviously a loss for that class across half-back. They've got some good ins. There's some gambling being done on Menzel, Hampton and Seedsman as to what they can offer, and they've drafted a star in Millerer.
So before we dig into them, the Premiership standard, and this has proven to be the most accurate measurement with defence and attack as a combination here. And Adelaide were right on the cusp of this by the end of last year. In fact, they spent a good portion of the latter stages in with Hawthorn and West Coast. We've looked at Richmond, who are right for defence and need a little bit more in the attack. So can they work from there, or will they give ground?
Well, one reason they were there was Patrick Dangerfield, because he made them the second best clearance club in the competition and the top 4 for contested possession. So he was a large chunk of that. And what he will probably leave a big hole in that ability to win the ball. Third best contested player in the competition, behind Fife and I think it's Ablett over the last 2 years. So that's a big hole. It's a big hole, and I just don't know how they feel it. Everyone says, oh yeah, the crouch balls will come in and do this, and then they've got to spin the magnets. It doesn't work that way. I think that he's a player that takes away 3 or 4 wins a season. He's that impactful.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest question mark. Can they cover him? And especially early on, only 8 weeks, so there's a real possibility that could be 2 and 6 after 8 weeks. And we all know about early season momentum, and usually when you lose a great player, trying to adjust to that, it takes quite a few weeks to get your head around that. So the other one is Sam Jacobs, the over-reliance on Sam Jacobs. He's a great ruckman, we know that, but if any injury to Sam Jacobs or lack of form, they've got no one to replace him. You know, Josh Jenkins is a key forward, can pinch hit in the ruck a little bit. So obviously loss of Dangerfield and over-reliance on Jacobs is a concern for mine.
I'm not as down in the mouth about the Crows, I've got to say. Looking forward to seeing what impact Don Pike has. He came schooled under the Neil Craig, very heavily focused defensive school, if you like. Spent a year or 2 over with Adam Simpson, or spent a couple of years with Adam Simpson. So I think he's going to actually make their defence a bit more consistent. It fluctuated a little bit last year for obvious reasons, but they were a high-pressing side early. They lost confidence. Then they went back to it. And then it was almost like they were a freewheeling side late in the season under Scott Camporelli. I think they need to protect their defence. It's not their strongest line. They've got some solid citizens down there. I think they need to embrace web defence and push up. And if Couch can come in and minimise the loss of Dangerfield and minimise it to 1.5 losses, King, in wins, rather than 3, I think they've got so many guns in their forward line. They're still going to be a really competitive, exciting side to watch.
That's their strength. But 2 questions for you. Tell me their best backman. Tell me their best midfielder.
Well, Talia's, in my mind, their best backman, but I think he needs to go from the man-on-man punch-away backman to the...
You want that play-off web, don't you?
I want to see a bit of intercept marking there. Brodie Smith's also a very good backman who wants to play midfield. But
super attacking backman.
Hampton might allow him to go more into the midfield, might allow Smith to go more into the midfield.
He's a talent, Curtly.
But it's a question
can get it on track.
Can they keep getting... If they can get it in there and minimise the damage in the back half... They've got so many guns up there, they're going to be thereabouts.
Back to your point, they don't have a problem moving the ball. Quickest in the competition, going
That's
coast
Brodie
to coast.
Smith is a big bonus in that area.
It's the group, isn't it? It is the group. I mean,
who's their best midfielder?
They've lost their best midfielder, but they've got...
who is their best midfielder?
Well, Rory Sloane would be their best midfielder.
Okay, and then you go to Thompson, it's 33. So they don't have, once again, you're falling into the trap saying, they'll prop up, they've got the great forward line. Plenty of teams got good forward lines who just don't make it. Tex controls that end. They don't have enough depth in the midfield now, and they're hoping untried players are going to come up and fill the void. Now, they might, and I hope they do. We always love to see people succeed.
The Couch is better than untried. He's just been injured. He's a talent.
Well, he's sort of untried for the last 2 years.
He's a talent.
I think overall in the midfield,
yes,
the midfield needs to apply better defensive pressure, don't they, King? If you look at their stats, they got scored against too early. Now, is that the fault of too aggressive press, or through sometimes the lack of defensive pressure put on by individual midfielders?
So scoring's hard, Derm.
Yeah.
Are you prepared to give away some of your scoring if you're Adelaide to tighten up the defence, or given that they were the team closest to Hawthorn and West Coast?
And the reason being is, we have a look at that plotting of the teams that are in that top left-hand portion of the premiership window, the only teams in there are the ones who score. The ones who score. Everyone can defend, given how much they want to put the emphasis on that. But the only teams that climb up into that premiership area are scorers who don't give away your scoring. So they have to just move heaven and earth to find some way of getting coverage from their midfield and some way of finding their back line to stop the opposition scoring them when the chips are down.
One of the guys I'm looking forward to seeing his development is Jake Lever. High talented pick. A lot of clubs were...
He's an intercept mark.
Intercept mark extraordinaire, but he's now into his second season, and we may see him jump up significantly. He was impressive last year at times. He was still immature. His body's 12 months older, and he's another one, I think,
We're
that could
asking
just
a
help
bit,
him up.
what were you like in your second year? You and you?
Well, I was struggling to get a game.
Yeah, so we're asking this kid to actually turn the fortunes of the club.
No, we're just asking him to just elevate himself up a little bit.
32 players they played last year, which was an AFL low. So we haven't seen that next one. It's hard to judge a lot of those players because we haven't seen them.
They've got 20 players under 50 games. That's a lot, isn't it, Kingy, for their list demographic? It's that haven't really seen a huge amount of AFL action. That's exciting for the future, but whether it's a now thing, I'm not sure it gets them into the finals.
Well, the ultimate question mark, though, is I think the new coach. And he's an exciting new coach.
Yeah.
He's flown under the radar, but he's had an unbelievably good apprenticeship, if you like. He's been with some great coaches. He's also, I think, an independent thinker of the game, and he's come out of a model that went from, 11th to 2nd last year in the West Coast Eagles.
Has he got it in him, do you think, to provide something new?
I think he has. I think he'd be an independent thinker. I trust the judgment of Mark Rasciuto. Mark Rasciuto has picked a couple of very good coaches, and I think he may be onto another very good coach.
If you walked in there as Don Pyke, they'd only had half a season under a new setup. Would you have built on that? Or would you go, actually, that's not ingrained enough, I'm happy to shift to exactly what I want? Did he come with a clean slate, or is he building on a platform?
It's a really tough one. I think that the plan last year didn't change dramatically from the midpoint forward, let's just say that. So I think that their players understand that it's a winning formula, and how they perform inside that mode or that model, if you like, ultimately gives them wins and losses. I don't think it'll be too drastic to change, because they've got a lot of tools already. They've lost a couple of players, One's a bona fide star.
Jenkins is their scoring prowess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they've got some really exciting... I mean, I know we touched on Miller. I don't think I've seen a player come in with as much composure as what this guy's got. He's got time. He's all class.
He looks good.
So you've just got to give them... I think you've got to give them a little bit of hope that they can still pick up from where they left off last year, already playing a brand that's a finals brand.
And Eddie Betts, Brownie, who provided so much joy last year in a really tough season.
No, he was fantastic. I think Betts and Walker, two of the most potent tag team combinations in the comp. I think Walker's the most inspirational captain outside of Luke Hodge, which I think Luke Hodge is clearly on another level. But, any time you've got a real potent forward line, they're a chance. For me, the question mark is the draw. They've been
a big draw.
Really stiff with their draw, and obviously a new coach. So, look, they can still make the finals. It's not beyond the realms of possibility. And their game style is exciting. I think they're one of the most exciting teams in the competition to watch, the way they move the ball.
Just they score.
I'll give you a couple of names that I think they need big jumps from. And you're talking about players like Charlie Cameron, who showed some real signs last year. You've got Curtly Hampton, who you touched on before. I think that Lever is a player that could be a star. They've got players like Jared Lyons and Riley Knight. That not a lot of people know a lot about just yet, but they're really going to be solid AFL players for a long period of time. How quickly that comes will be the judgment.
I think the asset is also on Menzel.
Yeah.
He was traded away because he didn't work hard enough. He's got super talent. Now's his second chance. He needs to make a mark.
All right, zero this down to the final question, and it requires a yes or a no in there somewhere.
No.
Will the Crows make the finals?
No, not for me. I think that the loss of Dangerfield takes them from 13 wins back to 9 for me.
They're back to about 11 wins, so they just missed the finals.
A lot lower in the win column.
I've got them just hanging on.
Okay. From a team that won a final last year to falling in most books. Mark your cards for tomorrow night. It'll be the Bulldogs, St Kilda, Carlton I know there's one or two at this table taken with the Giants, so we'll assess GWS and the Brisbane Lions. So we're going to have to set par for a couple of these teams. They're not going to be ones who race towards the 8. So have a look at Twitter when we walk out the door with the hashtag #FoxFooty. See how they're judging the judges.
I might not.
And if you've got the stomach for it, come back to the round table tomorrow night and we'll continue to look into the prospects and the shape of 2016. See you then.
This has been a Fox Footy production, part of the Fox Sports Network.